Carson Price for Monday, April 7th, 2025, coming to you from the Nation Network studio, built by Arbor Lee, here at the historic Wall Center. In this program, a presentation of Bet365. Matt Sakaris alongside Blake Price, four-time Juno Award winner Mike Rogerson, hitting switches, conducting things. Well, a busy weekend in the world of sports, including for the Vancouver Canucks. We will get to our top story and where things stand in a moment, but we will start with our Surrey Mitsubishi poll question, asking you, has Elias Pettersson played his final game in a Canucks uniform? You can vote yes, you can vote no. Do so at the Sakaris Price X and YouTube channels. We asked this because of Elliot Friedman's report on Hockey Night in Canada, that while Pettersson has not given up hope, a source tells him it is unlikely that Pettersson will return for one of the final 5 games in this Canucks season. Uncertainty reigns at this point, and of course, we all know what happens this summer. He has that no-move clause, which kicks in July 1st. It is a de facto deadline for the Vancouver Canucks to decide whether they want to keep Elias Pettersson and continue on with him being an $11.6 million centerpiece on this team, or whether or not it's time for him and the club to move on.
In an alternate universe where he stayed in the lineup over the last 3 weeks of the season here, remember he was a point per game over, 10, 12 games before he was hurt? This would have been a really interesting question at the end of the season, because if he was looking pretty good, then you could make the argument, okay, the Vancouver Canucks have to weigh whether or not that was just a good month to finish the season or that was the return of Elias Pettersson, and we would have had that to chew on. Now instead, you've got his improved play over 10 games in the back of your mind, but now you've also got an injured product. What are the chances the Vancouver Canucks, A, want to trade Elias Pettersson, B, we're going to get any decent trade offers to begin with, and C, now we'll get anything close to those offers because he's also going to finish the season injured. So the answer for me is an emphatic no. We've not seen the last of him in a Canucks uniform. I was of the mind anyhow, but now that he is injured in particular, I don't think they're getting pennies on the dollar in a trade.
Really? You're that dour on it, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I still think he's an elite talent that other
teams... So do I. That's why I think they should hold on to him.
That's why I think other teams may offer more than you might expect on Pettersson.
Other teams would definitely want to steal him, but I don't think they want to pay market price for him.
Yeah, well, and what is market price right now? It's a good question. I also voted no. It's mostly a hedge vote. Could I see him wanting to play in a game this season before it's all said and done, just to say he's played and not have the season end on a sour note, having to leave that game against the Rangers? Yes. And do I still think there's a fair chance that he'll be back next season? Also a yes.
Do you think any part of him wants to return just to prove any doubters wrong about his mettle, about his desire to come back? Or do you think he doesn't care what people think in that regard?
No, I think he does care. I think that's been part of the issue. I think there's a degree of rabbit ears there that is probably not constructive. I do think he wants back. I do think he likes this city. I don't think he loves the scrutiny of the market, and I don't think he loves the head coach. But no, I would not be surprised if he's back. And our friends at Surrey Mitsubishi are giving you $500 off the next day on a new or pre-owned vehicle based on how many goals go in. So 2 goals yesterday, you've got $1,000 off a new or pre-owned vehicle. Till tomorrow at Surrey Mitsubishi, You got to mention Sekeres Price when you're there. Score more, save more, more value, more savings. Bring them any offer. Surrey Mitsubishi will beat it. Visit 13820 104th Avenue. Our top story brought
I hope they're open on Sundays, by the way.
They are.
Yeah.
They're open 7 days a week. The only day they close is Christmas Day, I believe.
I wonder if there was a lineup on Sunday morning.
You sure hope. I teased Daniel. I said, the lineup may beat you to the dealership on Sunday morning. Top story brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, a foolish winery. Hanging by a thread, the Canucks split the weekend. So do the Wild. No blood, but no runway either, as playoff odds now down to a microscopic 0.2%. According to Money Puck, Minnesota is up to a 91.8% bet to make the playoffs. This after erasing a 1-0 deficit to the Dallas Stars after 2 periods yesterday. Dallas tied it late, too, at 2-2, but the Wild emerge with a 3-2 overtime victory, meaning a Vancouver loss in regulation tomorrow at the Dallas Stars would seal their fate. The Canucks' tragic number is now 1. If they drop 1 point anywhere here, they are out of the Stanley Cup playoffs. You can look at the standings and say, well, the Canucks can still get to the same number of wins as the Minnesota Wild, or could have gotten to the same number of wins as the Minnesota Wild. But as we told you last week, it was almost impossible to get over the regulation win tiebreaker. So, yes.
Against anybody, really, outside of Calgary.
It's true.
Got a chance versus Calgary.
They played so many games that went beyond regulation. Of course, won so few of them anyways, that no, the tiebreakers were not in the Canucks' favor either. So Minnesota does not play today. They do not play tomorrow. So the first opportunity for the Canucks to be mathematically eliminated comes tomorrow in Dallas. The Canucks remain on the 15th overall pick. If the NHL draft lottery goes to Hoyle, they are 1 point ahead of the Utah Hockey Club, so Utah is closing here. They are 4 points ahead of the New York Rangers and Detroit Red Wings, who each have a game in hand. If the season were to end today and the lottery goes to Hoyle, the Canucks would have a 97.9% chance of picking 15th overall, a 1.1% chance of picking 5th overall if they were to win one of the two lotteries and jump the maximum 10 places, and a 1.1% chance of picking 16th overall if Calgary, which is currently the last team in the lottery, were to win it and jump their 10 places.
Now, because of the strength of schedule, which to say for the Vancouver Canucks is pretty tough.
Yes.
We'll see if Calgary is going to push the envelope at all and create some urgency for some of its opponents and all that sort of stuff. But for the Canucks, it's not a tap-in schedule the rest of the way here.
No.
So, I could envision a 1-win finish for the Canucks in these 5 games.
Yeah, so they're at Dallas tomorrow, then at Colorado Thursday. That's the final road trip of the season against 2 very good teams, of course, from the Central Division. Then home Saturday to the Minnesota Wild, and suspect that Minnesota will still be looking to clinch at that point. The Canucks will likely be eliminated. Is Calgary eliminated at that point, or is Minnesota? Not to mention, is Minnesota still playing for seeding at that stage of the game? I mean, the St. Louis Blues just continue to win and win and win and win. It is 12 in a row now for the Blues, but Minnesota is only 2 points behind should St. Louis ever choose to lose a game. Then it is home a week from tonight against Macklin Celebrini and the San Jose Sharks. And then the season finale, April 16th, home to the same Vegas Golden Knights, who came into Rogers Arena last night and got a 3-2 victory, sitting atop the Pacific Division. Kevin Lankinen, terrific performance from the Canucks netminder. He makes 32 saves. Räty scores his 6th goal of the season. And Nils Höglander, back from injury, scores his 7th goal of the season. And Rick Tocchet had a lot of pleasant things to say about Nils Höglander in the aftermath, not something we had become accustomed to through most of his tenure here with Höglander, buried in the doghouse earlier this season, but he's been pretty good over the last, it's 3 or 4 months now for Nils Höglander, where he has played okay. The points weren't coming, but they're coming a little more fruitfully now. Here's Coach on Höglander.
He's been working on a position to get a puck. I think a lot of guys can learn from Hoggy. You got to move your feet and know the puck's going to come to you before it's coming. I think that's where Hoggy's really improved. At the beginning of the year, I thought he wasn't seeing that. Now he's seeing it. He's coming back with speed. He's taking the puck in the middle. He's trying to make a play. The odd time he gets in trouble is when he doesn't have any pace and he tries to make a play. That's the only time he has in trouble. But for the most part, he's one of the guys that's really trying to get some speed to the neutral zone.
Two things I think are define foot speed. One is just your skating, which I think is what
raw pace,
which is what Rick is referring to. What I noticed in that goal, and I've noticed in a couple of the others that he scored in the second half of the year, is you've got to get your feet set in the right position to get a decent shot away. And he's getting to the spot, that's foot speed there, and then adjusting his body quickly into a goal-scoring setup. Posture, so that he can actually flick that goal quickly on net and beat the goaltender. And that you see that goal and you're like, that guy will score 20 in the NHL. Like that's a 20 goal scorer in the NHL kind of goal. It is perplexing. His first half of the season really is perplexing because I think he scores 20 again in the NHL. The contract to me is safe for now. I am not sweating that contract right now. I do believe he's a 15 to 25 goal scorer next year for sure.
Yeah, and when we say contract, of course, got to go back to September now, but Nils Höglander signed a 3-year, $9 million extension just before the season began. That contract kicks in next year, so he's a $3 million player next year. And for the subsequent 2 years, how refreshing was it hearing Rick Tocchet hold him up as an example for other guys? That shows you how far he has come, and playing with pace through the neutral zone, that the coach is identifying that specifically, I think is also a nice feather in the cap. You'll remember when this season began, the Vancouver Canucks had done a lot of talking about creating more rush chances. That slowly faded into the background as the team, watched all these injuries, or in some cases, personal leave / team leave of JT Miller. When the offensive acumen of the unit dried up, it was far more defensive hockey, but they've been trying to get back to it. I'd like to think to help ingrain it a little further for next season, and Höglander doing just that. As for Räty, and look, this program was asking for Räty before he got his most recent recall and put back into the lineup. He's playing in the middle between Dakota Joshua and Kiefer Sherwood. It's been 7 straight games where Tocchet has left that line together, which is quite a long time, given how impatient this coach has been with different line combinations this season. And it very much looks like an audition for the third-line center job. Joshua, Sherwood, Räty, you could absolutely see that being a third line.
I like what he does. I don't think he's fast. I wouldn't describe him as fast, but he seems quick enough right now. Like I'm not saying don't work on that over the summer. I hope he does.
He's talked about it.
But I watch him and he seems to get there. Like it doesn't feel like I'm watching a guy skating in mud. Nope. There's some promise there, and I love the fact that he's going. I see him going to the dirty areas. I see him going to the top of the crease.
That's his game. He's a bigger body. He's got to go play on the inside, and for the most part, he has. So you got to like what you see from Räty, who's still just so young, 22 years old, pointing forward. As for another young forward who features in the Canucks plans, Jonathan Lekkerimäki scratched for Nils Höglander. Look, I don't love that because he's amongst your best natural goal scorers. You need goals. I also understand that some of the other youngsters have played well, including Max Sasson, who scores on Saturday, including Linus Karlsson. Were you up in arms about Lekkerimäki being scratched?
No, this is not a rookie on a goal scoring pace right now. He's contributing every now and then, and that's fine. No one's crying foul about it either. But he doesn't need to play every night. Doesn't need to play on back-to-back nights when you've got a returning veteran. And against a good team, I think guys that have been pros for a long, long time probably give you a little bit more structure, a little bit more sturdiness against a team like the Vegas Golden Knights. So it honestly didn't even really register for me as being a thing.
I can buy that as well. What I didn't understand, and still don't understand, even after his explanation last night, is why they did not challenge the first Vegas goal, the tying goal at 1-1.
Mm-hmm.
Tocchet, as you'll hear here in a second, says it wasn't offside. Boy, it sure looked offside by every angle and every screen grab that I saw. Rob Williams provided one there.
And I'm very careful now because of what is called the parallax view. Anytime that you see a puck and you're looking for that white in between the puck and the line, there's something called parallax that occurs because you're actually looking at a piece of the ice. It makes it seem like it's the white of the offensive zone, but it's not. It's actually the side view of the ice that creates that illusion. And
I have it here. The effect whereby the position or direction of an object appears to differ when viewed from different positions.
Yes. And the ice creates that illusion. So I always want a buffer. When I'm looking at those things, I always want a buffer. Even when I consider the possibility of a parallax occurring there, I still think it was offside. So I'm surprised to hear him say that.
Prediction, Blake is big on the word parallax. You're going to hear it through the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Well, no, we have actually seen it in these last two Calgary Flames games with the puck sitting on the. You see these two pucks sitting on the line for the Flames?
I know.
But they made the right call both times. Both of those are not fully over.
So here's my thing. You need to pull out all the stops in a must-win game.
Yeah.
And going in, it was a must-win game. That's how coaches and players will view it, right, until you're mathematically eliminated. And then secondly, you have an outstanding penalty kill. So if you're wrong, I would lean on the best unit of the team to get me through those 2 minutes, right?
Yeah.
So here's Coach.
It's a deadly power play.
It sure is.
So that's what he was afraid of, I think.
Well, you've got a top-tier PK unit.
Yeah.
The immovable object versus the irresistible force.
Somebody's got to win.
Here's Coach and how they saw it.
Challenge, it would have been offside. So, but yeah, I think there was just one angle. I could have, at that point, I could have called the timeout maybe if we got a couple more angles. But from the angles that we got, it was onside.
Huh. They must have different angles than what was made available to us.
Yeah, it must have.
Yeah. Saturday brought a 6-2 victory over the Anaheim Ducks, including the 5 fastest goals in team history, 4:30 apart in the opening period in what has to be one of their best periods of the season. The Abbey crew was shining bright. Elias Pettersson, the defenseman, with his first National Hockey League goal. Sasson scores upon the emergency recall. Remember, he's only there because Nils Omand goes down in a heap during Friday's practice.
It's a beautiful goal, too.
Later seen in with his left arm in a sling by our friend Patrick Johnson. Lekkerimäki and Linus Karlsson with assists. And Räty saw some penalty kill time, also important for next season because, of course, he's got such great face-off prowess.
Mm-hmm.
You certainly hope to put him out there on the PK unit. He wins the draw. You get the clear.
And he's got the length as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's a lot of elements there that should make for a decent penalty kill. I mean, when skating is one of your issues, but you have size and length and can win face-offs, I mean, that's almost perfectly suited to be a penalty killer, right? You're not going to be asked to skate long distances just so long as you can skate in short areas and read the play. And I think Räty's a reasonably smart player. The one thing I'll say, and we've talked about how there has been a good deal of development this year down with the Abbotsford Canucks, not to mention a lot of winning of late. More on that in a second. And the development isn't just physical development. The development isn't just do you come to the National Hockey League and make your mark somehow, some way, but also how you think the game and whether you're able to play the game the way the coach wants it played. And Tocchet has been very clear about, what he wants from players, what they should be thinking about when they're out there. And, Räty, Sasson, Elias Pettersson, there are numerous examples this year of guys who have come on up and look like they've not only developed physically, not only they've developed in their game, but look like they're reasonably intelligent hockey players too, that aren't overwhelmed by the National Hockey League stage and have some hockey IQ in terms of knowing where to be and what not to do when they're out there.
This might be far too broad brush, but he's a Finn. Find me a Finn that hasn't killed penalties.
Yeah.
Well. They generally are coached pretty well in Finland.
Very much so.
They are coached from a very young age about responsibility, about work ethic, about details.
Yep.
It would stand to reason.
Yep. So the Canucks embark on this trip, Dallas, Colorado. We do not know whether Elias Pettersson and Tyler Myers made, not to mention Nils Åman, whether they made the trip. I would certainly doubt that Åman made the trip. Honestly, with Myers, why bother? He's mid-30s. He has played a lot of hockey for you. Pettersson is interesting to me, but based on the Friedman report, it doesn't sound like he would play in these two games if he is playing at all this season.
Tyler with the Super Chat, and thank you as always for the Super Chats. The proceeds going to the BC Mental Health Foundation. Should definitely shut down EP40. Looking forward to seeing you guys on Thursday at the watch party. Thank you, Tyler. And yeah, I don't think there's a whole lot of sense in allowing that to continue.
Yeah. Again,
we don't know the injury.
We don't know the injury, and also it'd be an awful shame for his season to end the way it does, where he pulls himself out of a game. And also, Tocchet last week was saying he's day-to-day. That there was some discomfort when he tried skating hard and didn't skate hard for long, but also said, when they tell me a guy is day-to-day, I expect him to play at some point. It would be another as the world turns chapter for Elias and his injuries and how the coach has characterized it if he can't get back in the next, that was last Tuesday, Blake.
Yeah.
So we'd be talking about a 2+ week period where he's unable to play. I don't dispute there's some wisdom in just shutting him down, but also, if he comes back and has a good game, does that not leave a better taste in his mouth and everybody's mouth as you head to the summer?
There's always the risk that he gets re-injured, leaves the game midway, and it looks even worse. But yeah, I can hear that.
Yeah. What's up with Yellow Dog neighborhood? Foolish.
Well, they've got lots coming up. It's springtime.
It's almost Wine Village season. It's Wine Village season in Oliver.
There is that. But first, our favorite festival, the Fest of Ale. The Okanagan's favorite beer fest, fast approaching. And this time, spirits are invited as well. So join Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, Yellow Dog Spirits in Penticton for the Fest of Ale, April 11th and 12th, for a weekend full of craft brews. A good reason to head up there early and taking part in the festive beer.
Alexander Ovechkin is the National Hockey League's all-time leading goal scorer. And look, on Friday we had a very good discussion about this record, about the politics that are wrapped around it. Today I want to go through what I liked about this record. First of all, happened to tune in Friday late after he had scored 2. Saw him refuse to go on the ice for the empty netter against Chicago. I think that was appropriate. Spencer Carberry, the head coach of the Washington Capitals, confirmed after the game saying, no. He doesn't want the record breaker to be on an empty net. He wants a goalie in the cage. I thought that was had some honor to it. Does it in the same number of games as Wayne Gretzky. That's going to be just one of the all-time statistical oddities, right? 1,487 games to get to 895 goals, one better than the great one's 894. And I love that he scored a classic Alexander Ovechkin goal from his office, right? The top of that left circle as a right shot. That when you think Alexander Ovechkin, that is the goal you think of. Gretzky's office was behind the net. Ovi's office is the top of that left circle. And the big booming right-handed shot. There's some other hockey context that I like about this record. The date, April 6th, in 2004, so 21 years ago yesterday, the Capitals won the draft lottery and the right to select Alexander Ovechkin. Secondly, and this one was absolutely crazy, Gordie Howe's final NHL goal came on April 6, 1980. If you can believe that.
Wow.
So 45 years after Mr. Hockey scores his final one in the NHL, his record is broken for a second time. And then this from Al Galdi, who does a Capitals media member there in the Washington, D.C. area. Mm-hmm. The fear was Alex Ovechkin would break the record while a washed-up player on a bad team. He has instead done this in a 40-goal season for the top team in the Eastern Conference in his age 39 season, in which he missed 16 games due to a broken left fibula. All-time legend.
Yeah, that's the other part, is that you get him as a healthy guy looking like Alex Ovechkin.
He didn't hang on to break this record. It's funny because that had come up in other record chases in the past, particularly the NFL rushing record one day. Jim Brown had it. Then was Franco Harris going to hang around just to break it? Then Peyton broke it. Barry Sanders decided to retire at the height of his powers. Emmitt Smith played a little longer to get it. But it is such a austere record that you like to see it broken by somebody who's on a season.
I know we don't have Mark Lazarus's tweet, but he also mentioned anybody who's ever watched a hockey highlight from the 1980s knows that Alex Ovechkin has been the NHL's greatest goal scorer.
For sure. I mean, we talked about it with Jeff Merrick on Friday. You would love to see what a healthy Mike Bossy would look like, right? Mm-hmm. Mike Bossy, who played less than 1,000 games. Mike Bossy, who did not have a single bad season in his career. I would love to see where Bossy would have gotten to in terms of raw goals had he been able to had his body held up. But yes, I mean, if you want to make the argument that Alex Ovechkin is the greatest goal scorer in hockey, you'll get no argument here.
He's got to get 50 more to pass Gretzky for all-time goals in all situations.
Including playoffs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think he probably does that too. That's a season and a half. We'll see how many goals he gets in the playoffs.
We'll see
really
how long
help.
they last in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Like if they go 3 or 4 rounds here, then I think, yes,
he
absolutely.
trims off another 12, 15 goals.
I was going to, then I think he's got a very, very good chance to do so. I understand it's regular seasons are neat and tidy in terms of our record keeping, but really, you can argue that one's more important, right? Like
that is the most goals scored in NHL games.
Well, and playoff games matter more.
Yeah.
Things I didn't like about this record, beyond the specter of politics, we talked about that on Friday. Not going to rehash that. The commercialism around this is a little bit jarring. First of all, I mean, if you paid $6,000 for a lower bowl seat for a Capitals Islanders game, God bless you. Do you see the prices on get-in prices for, and all the jokes were out there too. Alex Ovechkin has managed to do something that, few have ever done, and that's getting people to pay that kind of money to go watch an Islanders game. But the Islanders are selling warm-up pucks from yesterday's game. $375 for a warm-up
on the resale market or retail market?
No. The Islanders are selling warm-up pucks. So the pucks that were used in warm-up And Alex may or may not have touched any of them. Some of them could have been down at the Islanders' end, $375. The Islanders have, if you want to print, of course, we don't have paper tickets anymore, right? So if you want to print your game ticket and keep it as a souvenir, memento, like, this was very common when you and I were growing up, right? If you saw any kind of a historical game, the
first ever Sharks game was here in Vancouver. I have the puck.
You put that ticket stub aside, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you want to do that, they'll do it for the mere price of $45. $45 to print the games. And then there's the Canucks. They're selling signed Ovechkin jerseys. What's going on there?
I saw some muttering about that. I couldn't find it. Where is that?
This was out there last night.
I know, but I didn't like. It's not on their website, or at least it's not easy to find on their website. They're burying it if you can. So I'll trust people that say that, but I mean,
the Canucks put out a tweet last night.
Did they?
Grade 8 Ovechkin auction is now live. Place your bids to own a piece of greatness. Bid now, VancouverCanucks.com/grade 8 auction.
A little odd.
Did they just get him to sign a bunch of jerseys when he was coming through town and they put him away? And anyways.
Did you see Ovechkin meet with Elias Sorokin in the bowels afterwards?
I did, yeah. Nice moment between them in the handshake line. Very classy of the Islanders to line up and shake his hand.
Sorokin saying to him, so the pressure's off now? He goes, yeah, it's good now.
Yeah.
And that'll be interesting to see. Like, is he goalless?
He also asked for Sorokin's stick, and he said, yeah, absolutely.
He said, like, is it possible he goes goalless the rest of the season now? Like, does he just put his feet up a little bit?
And then the other thing you're wondering is, like, how much pain has he been playing for? Like, he came back from this broken leg very, very quickly, 16 games, and he looked awfully sluggish.
They have a 9-point lead in the Eastern Conference. Put your feet up, Alex. Be ready for the playoffs. Like, honestly, I'd sit him, Matt.
Yeah. Abbotsford. We have got to talk about the Abbotsford Canucks.
Officially the hottest team in professional hockey because
they're better than the Blues.
They're better than the Blues.
They have won 13 games in a row. Take that, St. Louis, and your meager 12-game winning streak. Bah. Small potatoes. They sweep Laval, who was the HL's best team, at Abbey Center this weekend. They have their final 2 home games next weekend versus Calgary, and then they close with 3 in California, Bakersfield, Coachella Valley, and Ontario. They are 3 points behind the first place in the Pacific Division Colorado franchise, and they're 1 point ahead of third place Ontario. That's the Ontario Reign of Ontario, California, the Kings Farm Club. On Saturday, they go to a shootout. Archer Sheloves is perfect. And Jet Wu, of all people, the defenseman, with the shootout winner. And then on Sunday, youngster Ty Mueller with 2 goals. Arshdeep Bains with 2 assists. They win 4-3. And Blake, there's a graphic for those of you watching on YouTube or on a visual medium. Dave Hall put together a list of the contributions during this streak, and virtually every player of consequence is name-checked here. Nikita Tolopilo with 6 wins in this streak, Ty Young with 4, Sheloves with 3. But we want to, Sammy Blais leads them in scoring, or Blaine and Baines lead them in scoring with 14. But we want to spend a minute on Ty Mueller, because he is a legitimate prospect.
He's a rookie. This is his AHL
rookie season, and I know you were crunching some numbers.
Because I seem to remember him being not too present in the opening weeks of the regular season. So I was like, the fact that he's up to where he is points-wise, it feels like that's been done more of late. So, yeah, if you trim off the opening 16 games of the season, his points per game goes skyrocketing, 34 points in 46 games. As an AHL rookie, he turned 22 but weeks ago, 4 weeks ago. So this is a young 22 just discovering the pro game, and
Yep.
he's ticking upwards with every passing week. And he had 2 in the win yesterday.
A 4th-round pick, 105th overall in the 2023 entry draft out of Edmonton. He was an AJHL kid, played 3 years at the University of Nebraska, Omaha, had 2 decent seasons, but, it almost looked like he had stalled out a little bit in his junior year. The production was pretty much the same as it was his sophomore year, albeit in more games played. So it was kind of an aggressive assignment, the AHL, early on.
Yeah.
You're wondering, okay, what's this guy going to be?
Nobody would have batted an eyelash if he
20
went to the ECHL.
If, 26 points in 40 college games, what's he going to be at 21 years old when he made the team?
Yeah.
Well, 38 points in 62 games. He'll get his first taste of the playoffs as well. I don't see him having played in the playoffs, even back in junior. So good on Ty Mueller with 12 points over this winning streak. And look, he's the center iceman as well, Blake.
Yeah.
So,
and they're playing him. They're playing him down the middle.
Yeah.
As an AHL rookie.
Right.
Like,
and so I'm not sitting here telling you that between Atu Ratu, Max Sasson, and Ty Mueller, they have solutions at center ice for the big club. What I am saying is there's a little more bottom 6 depth, I think, at center ice for the big club because of the fact that all 3 of those guys have had good years.
Yeah, and the top end, who knows what the top end is of any of these players, but between what you ask is for prospects to develop.
Yes, and he is developing.
And they are developing.
Good on him. Let's get to our menu today. It is brought to you by Greta, and here's the thing. We're there Thursday for a Canucks Army watch party presented by Fountain Tire. Doors at 5, game at 6. When we first scheduled this, or when Canucks Army first scheduled this, they thought, big game down the stretch. Doesn't look like it's going to be a big game anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So we've decided to stand down on any ticket price. Entry is free. Those of you who have bought tickets will get you your refund. There's exciting giveaways, a 50-50 draw in support of Kids Sport, our Kids Sport Vancouver, our charitable partner for the evening. Please come on down. Say hello. Love to meet you. Must be 19 plus to attend. It's 50 West Cordova, Greta, Thursday, 5 p.m.
A lot of fun.
Begin. We'll talk to Darren Dreger here. It's been a few weeks since we've talked to our NHL insider on Mondays here, talking about Thatcher Demko, Elias Pettersson, Rick Tocchet's future, and more with the Vancouver Canucks. Jeff Paterson will stop by as well as we discuss, some of the topics we hit here as well. Räty and Höglander and the way they've developed. Sasson a little bit as well. And got to say, the effort level of the Vancouver Canucks has not been wanting here in a difficult spot. And I think that's important as well.
It's an underskilled team right now.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
All right, time now for our Bet365 bets of the day. I had a pretty good weekend. I got the under on the Whitecaps game.
Mm-hmm.
I got Florida over Auburn, laying the points in the national semifinal. So I'm going to go today as well. And look, 2 extraordinary Final Four games on Saturday. Duke somehow blows a 14-point lead in the final 8 minutes. They were up 9 with 2 minutes and 6 seconds to play. Florida, meanwhile, came back down 9 against Auburn in the second half. It's going to be hard for Houston after the big upset and a huge comeback. I think to dial the emotion and the focus back up so quickly after the shocker beating Duke. So I'm going to take Florida tonight to win the national championship. I'll lay the 1 point. One shining moment and a shining account if you pick the winner.
I don't know what you need to do to get some respect around here.
St. Louis?
But winning 12 games is not going to do it. You're getting pretty decent cheddar here on the Blues to beat the Winnipeg Jets. Tough assignment at the what you would presume is near the end of the winning streak, if it's not the end. I mean, come on, how much longer can it go on?
What did AV always say? Like in a long losing streak, there's a couple of games you absolutely should have won and didn't go. And there's a couple of games when in a long winning streak you absolutely should have
lost. And they've gone past 60 minutes a bunch here recently.
Yes, they have. Although, was it Saturday? They scored 4 quickly out of the chute, and that was that?
They don't always need more than 60 minutes. But plus 150 for the Blues to match the Abbey Canucks and get to 13 straight wins. At this point,
Who are they playing?
The Jets in Winnipeg.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I've been predicting the demise from about the 8-game mark on. I've been tonight's the night.
At 5 or 6 wins, I'm like, they're not that good. They'll come back. Not so much. Breaking news coming in from Bet365, where every nail-biting overtime win is a barn burner, every face-off hat trick, power play, shot on goal, penalty shot, and every suspenseful minute in between. Amazing. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary. At Bet365, an official partner of the NHL, download the Bet365 app and use code NATION to get in on the game. Must be 19 or older. Please play responsibly. Darren Dreger coming up next. Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center. This next guest brought to you by the Arnold Palmer designed Whistler Golf Club. Spring preparations underway. Excited for opening day, May 9th. Now accepting online bookings for the entire 2025 season. No need to wait to get those times locked in. And if you do have a group of 12 or more and you're planning a 2025 visit, get those times on hold now. The prime times, fill it up fast. And tell them about your group at whistlergolf.com/groups. Follow on social at Whistler Golf. Here he is, TSN Hockey Insider, one half of the Ray and Dregs Hockey Podcast. It is our friend Mr. Dreger after a few weeks away after trade deadline. Calm after the trade deadline, or have you been stormy since as well?
No, I mean, just the usual stuff, right? There's been some interesting stories, obviously, with Alex Ovechkin, finally setting the record, shouldn't say finally, but setting the record yesterday in somewhat dramatic fashion, kind of vintage Ovechkin. You had the Tortorella scenario unfold with the Philadelphia Flyers. So there's always those smattering of hockey-related stories. And then on top of that, of course, the great races for the playoff spots that more or less are settled out right now. Maybe a bit of jockeying that can happen. But yeah, I mean, from the March 7th trade deadline to where we are today, Bobby Mack used to call it mail it in March. And it just doesn't feel like we get away with it anymore. I say that, and then you had
the Vancouver Canucks tried to give you some fodder too, though. The Canucks are
forever
eternal well of storylines for you guys.
Well, and you guys, we just feed off what comes out of the Vancouver market and try and make some sense out of what's gone on. But yeah, there's been a fair bit, and when you gaze into the crystal ball of what might the offseason look like, what does next year look like for the Vancouver Canucks? It's an impossibility to try and figure out from the top story, whether that's coaching to, the future of Elias Pettersson to, just go down the list of some of the contracts that they're going to have to wrestle with. For me, among the most intriguing, of course, is what do you do with Thatcher Demko? And I think that most of us would say, all right, well, you have to analyze the body of the work. And when healthy, the body of the work suggests that this guy's, if not an elite level goaltender, then that's the direction that he's headed. But this has been a tough year for him. So I am intrigued to see what that negotiation looks like when they can get going on it this summer. And if it's too lofty, does that encourage the Canucks to potentially consider the high level of interest that would be there? Probably not. But again, it has to play itself out.
And people that might have been a little bit scared about the Lankinen contract, because he's had a little bit of a speed wobble here in the last few starts. It was a loss, but he was marvelous last night versus Vegas. So maybe confidence is restored too that he can be what he was this season. But very few people think he can be a 55-game starter. He seems to max out when the workload gets high. Like The tandem would be pretty marvelous if they can afford to do it.
That's the big question, though. And it is going to be a real interesting negotiation to see how it plays out, because, Thatcher is in that window right now where, of course, you want to negotiate for as much as you possibly can, both in term and an annual average salary. But what are the comps here, right? And that's where it gets tricky, because again, you can't blame the guy for having a tough year on the injury front. I mean, that happens and has happened historically to some of the best players in the game. And when Demko came back healthy, he provided a level of goaltending that I think most Canuck fans can look into the future and see, okay, we need more of that. But what has come to be just reality in the NHL more than ever now is that tandem, and the feeling that you do need to have both of those guys, right? You've got to have the one and then the 1A at an affordable price. And they probably felt like, even though Lankinen got a real nice boost in terms of what he's used to earning, they probably felt like they got him at a decent price at that point.
Yeah, and of course, if you are thinking of moving Demko, it's because he can get you a second line center, or he can be part of the solution at center ice. Dregs, is that the thinking?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I guess what I want to do, though, and I knew we were going to go down this path, when you look at the available centers as unrestricted free agents, the crop isn't very deep, right? I think of Sam Bennett. There are some conspiracy theorists out there who think that, it'd be just the ultimate case of tampering if there's a deal that's parked on Sam Bennett. I don't believe that for a second. And the reason I don't is because I know the agent well in Darren Ferris. And no different than what Ferris is doing with Mitch Marner with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Why wouldn't he do the same thing with Sam Bennett? Yeah, there's no shortage of teams that would have interest in Bennett. Toronto is probably right near the top of the list of teams that have interest in Sam Bennett. But the agent and the player, if you waited this long, the agent and the player might as well go the duration now into July 1st. But, I can visualize Sam Bennett on a lot of teams. And if you're the Canucks and you're shopping in that market, why wouldn't you have interest? Brock Nelson, what's going to become of him? Again, most believe that the Minnesota Wild, when legal to do so, are going to take a real hard look and a crack at him. I think that Matt Duchene is more likely going to stay in Dallas. He'll find a way to extend. Don't know that for sure, but you're also talking about a 34-year-old hockey player who's made a ton of money over the course of his career. And if Dallas goes as deep as we think they are, I guess what I'm saying is, throw Granlund into that mix in Dallas as well. The unrestricted free agent pool, you get one of those four guys, not a bad ad. Not a bad ad. You're going to have to overpay to get them, but there's certainly no guarantee. So if you're kind of swinging in that circle of throwing something out there that is going to have some meat on to attract conversation for a number 2 center, then maybe Demko has to be included in that conversation. But if you're okay with what the ask is, and I guess you wouldn't be, because if you were okay with it, you'd get the deal extended and you just move on, and that wouldn't be the price or the ticket that you'd give up for that number 2 center. But who are we talking about here when we're talking about that type of center being available, and probably isn't going to be available until closer to the deadline?
What do you know about Elias Pettersson's injury and his immediate future?
Yeah, I mean, I think, as has been reported, just given the fact that there are, 5 games left in the regular season, a week or so, I don't get the sense that he's likely coming back, and that might be by design of the club. You might as well just let him rest it, whatever he's got going on. I think there's been a lot of speculation on what might be going on, and the only thing that I've been given, more so from the player side than the club, is that, just don't believe it. But nobody is also offering transparency to say that this is the issue. Although a club source did say to me this morning that it's more likely than not that he will not return for the regular season. I don't think anybody would be overly surprised at that.
And the question then is, what's the confidence that they have that he can be a different player come next season with the no trade clause kicking in on July 1st? How has all of this season, if we can now put the the close on this season for Elias Pettersson, in totality, what's going to be their thinking as this no trade clause gets set to kick in?
Well, I mean, there has to be ample conversation. I'm sure that Jim Rutherford and Patrick Galvin, Rick Tocchet to a point, have had endless conversation about this. And then you have the conflicting scenarios around the possibilities of the head coaching job that, cloud the process a little bit. Because it would matter what the experience of a Rick Tocchet is with Elias Pettersson, and whether or not, you feel comfortable enough going into July 1st when the trade protection kicks in. And, I'm still in the camp that believes you're probably not going to get enough in return for Pettersson now to push away. Like, you invested in the player, you paid the player and extended him to the point that you did because you loved what you saw and you saw a future in Pettersson. And I don't know that it makes sense to write him off after a real difficult year. And he's not the only player in the Vancouver Canucks organization that had some signs of struggle over varying stretches of this year. Who's kidding who? So if you're trading for pennies on the dollar, does that make sense? Because you're just creating a bigger hole at center ice. So, I mean, there's got to be a lot of talk. Again, let's see how the Canucks finish here, end of the year, what the end of season conversations are with coaching, inside management, the exit interviews with the players. You might get a read on whatever message comes from Petey. If he says, look, I'm committed here. I'm going to do everything that I can this offseason to get physically stronger, mentally sharper, all of those things. And I'm making you a promise that I'm going to be a top-level player again. Well, maybe that's all you need to hear if you're ownership and senior management.
Did you hear Tocchet on his injury last week?
No, like the specifics of it? No.
Well, and he talked about how he's day-to-day, and when a guy's day-to-day, you expect him to play, and talked about a little bit of discomfort and things like that.
Yeah.
It was once again sounding like a head coach who wasn't entirely impressed with the severity of injury keeping his star.
Well, you have to say it was adjacent to his talk about Nils Höglander's injury. He's like, oh, this guy wants to get back into the lineup. Like, it was sort of...
There was a comparison made?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you get the sense either from the club or anywhere around the league, Darren, that this is coming down to either Rick Tocchet or Elias Pettersson?
I don't know if I would say it as bluntly as that, but I think that has to have some influence in, both decisions here. Again, we have to remind people it's a club option. And, I've seen and heard some things that, the Vancouver Canucks aren't happy with the level of speculation around Rick Tocchet's future. And I can appreciate that. Almost every Canadian market has those moments though, right? Where, you've got a story like this. In this case, it's a significant story. And then you've got the firing of John Tortorella in Philadelphia. And I think we can all visualize, you don't have to have inside intel to recognize that the Philadelphia Flyers would be interested in one of their own. Right. And that's Keith Jones with interest in Rick Tocchet for a myriad of reasons. I would wonder, and I have not had this conversation with Tocchet, I would wonder where his headspace is at. Varying back and forth over the course of the year, not recently. He acknowledged that this has been the toughest year that he's had in hockey. Bar none. Toughest year. That says a lot, right? And there's all kinds of reasons that contributed to that. Obviously, he and his coaching staff tried their very best to navigate and to manage the relationship and the distraction and all of the unrest around JT Miller and Elias Pettersson. And then on top of that, so the club gets involved. They move out JT Miller. And I think we saw moments of where Petey's game was starting to climb a little bit, right? He'd have a period here or there, or then he'd put together a whole game, and it felt like maybe he was ready to turn the corner. But again, we're only getting the very basics, just scratching the surface of the level of frustration from Rick Tocchet and that coaching staff with Elias Pettersson, JT Miller, and probably other pieces as well. So, yeah, I mean, first of all, the Vancouver Canucks have to make that call into the year. Are they willing to, enact the option and force Rick Tocchet to go into the final year of his deal. And if he makes it abundantly clear that he isn't going to extend in Vancouver, is that enough to keep him away from another team like Philadelphia? I don't know. It's going to be fascinating.
You have to think that if he gets to June and nothing's resolved here, that's not a good sign. I mean, if you got 6 weeks to talk and it's not done by June 1st, I mean, at the draft, my goodness, all bets are off at that point, right? I mean, they've got nothing else to do here. This is going to be a long offseason. If you have to think there's some yard markers in their mind, Dregs, where they're like, hey, if we haven't heard from them or if we're not solved by this point, we have to have a plan here. And you don't enact that club option on a guy who's reluctant to come back, do you?
Well, that's where it gets tricky. You're right. I mean, why would you want to invest even on the short term for somebody you know doesn't want to commit or extend? I mean, he's a lame duck coach going into the final year of his contract if it's enacted by the club as part of the club option. So I'm with you on your timeline, and that's age old. I mean, clubs normally almost always want to have their head coach in place by the draft for a variety of different reasons, clearly. But I also think back to why the Vancouver Canucks made the decision they made at the time they made the decision with Bruce Boudreau. And they wanted to get a coach in place so that guy could, have a little bit of runway so that you finish off the season and then you get into the off season and players aren't learning what the coaching is all about. They've got a pretty good handle on that coming into training camp and then to the start of the next season. So I mean, in a dozen different ways, this is not how the Vancouver Canucks ownership or management saw this year playing out. I mean, it's just been one thing after another that Tocchet and Patrick Galvin and Jimmy Rutherford have had to try and manage, and it isn't going away anytime soon for all the reasons we've discussed.
Yeah, and we're into off-season talk. We will be fully into off-season talk in a couple of weeks, Dregs, which is when we'll welcome you back here when the off-season really gets going. Thank you for this, sir, and until then.
All right, guys, thanks.
If you are struggling with things like managing stress, anxiety, relationships, or divorce, reach out to the counselors at Advanced Counseling. Book your free initial consultation today at advancedcounseling.ca.
Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center. Golf season is upon us. Big tournament in Augusta, Georgia later this week. And it's time to load up on bogey juice. That's right, bogey juice. Because you know you're making more bogeys than you're making birdies. Crafted with tantalizing blend of crisp apple flavoring and kick and ginger for that refreshing zing. Every shot of bogey juice. It's like a hole-in-one for your taste buds, sweetened to perfection with simple syrup and made even smoother with top-shelf vodka. It's the only juice that guaranteed to make your golf buddies beam with envy.
Now you can cheer on your slice.
Yeah. Whether you're tossing it back as a shot or shaking it up in your favorite mix, Bogey Juice promises a fun, edgy experience that will leave you laughing all the way to the 19th hole. Perfect for turning your average golf day into an unforgettable celebration. Because sometimes the only bogey you want in your life, not on your scorecard. Raise your glass, let the good times roll with Bogey Juice. Find it at bogeyjuice.com.
We're going to be drunk. Our next guest can drive home.
That's right, because he doesn't make many bogeys, especially not at Northlands. Here's Jeff Paterson, our Canucks reporter, the host of RinkWide Vancouver. How are you?
I'm good. Can I make an appeal here to all of your viewers and listeners to buy Bogey Juice? Because how many times have you been out with either buddies or you get like paired with strangers on a golf course? Somebody makes a birdie and a guy inevitably reaches into his golf bag and pulls out who knows what and how long has it been hidden in the golf bag, and then they're like forcing it upon you. Like, it's not that I don't want the drink, it's just I don't know how long it's been buried in your golf bag. So do yourself a favor and just refresh the stock.
Yes.
Yeah, right there. Turn the page.
Make sure somebody, that way somebody has some in the foursome as well. I've also done that, right? Oh, what a great birdie. Who's got some? Oh, 4 empty bags.
Well, birdies we don't have to worry about.
Well, this guy does. Jeff, your big takeaway on the weekend?
That they played better on Sunday against a better opponent than they did on Saturday. Obviously, the 4.5-minute spurt in the first period was incredible, something that the Canucks have never done in 50-plus years of existence. The fastest 5 goals was wild. And as a guy that sits there along press row and literally jots down every scoring play longhand, I missed the second and fourth goals because the first one came, I was buried in my pad, and they scored again. And I all right. And then I kind of caught up again, and another one. And so on and on it went. No idea what Greg Cronin was thinking. Like, why call your timeout at 5-1? If there was a time to call a timeout, how about 3-1 when your team is still in it? Outside of the 5-minute span, though, in the first, I didn't think the Canucks played all that well. They didn't have to. They were up 5-1, and pretty comfortable. But Anaheim had a couple of second-period power plays that could have made it a 2-goal game. We know that the Canucks have a bit of a sketchy track record, and the Ducks just kind of went meekly and mildly into the afternoon sun. And that was refreshing, too, to be able to leave the building and still have the sun shining on Saturday afternoon. I think no issues with the effort against the Vegas Golden Knights. A much better opponent. I think the Canucks recognize that they would have to give it their all to hang with a team that's legitimately built to take another run to the Stanley Cup. And, of course, Vegas is going to get to plug Thomas Hertl back in at some point. They got a 30-goal guy that's just sitting there on the sidelines, and we know that that's kind of been their MO over the years, to have these players that are parked on the sideline that, they get to bring them off mothballs and off IR just in time for the playoffs. So at 2-1, when Vegas scored the 2-1 goal late in the first period, I kind of thought maybe the game would get away from the Canucks and that they would go mildly. But to their credit, they didn't. And so I agree with Rick Tocchet. Didn't love the third period. They didn't have the puck much in the third period. And ultimately, the better team on the night won the hockey game. But I think fans who, and how many times have we come here on a Monday and sort of digested the weekend that was and talked about fans not getting their money's worth, and that's been a theme all season long. I think fans can live with the fact that Nils Höglander comes back into the lineup and like a bat out of hell the first couple of shifts and scores a goal, and Räty going hard to the net, standing his ground, and a rebound there. The kinds of goals that they scored. Sure, the fans would have liked a few more goals. The Canucks would have liked a few more goals. But overall, I thought the effort was all right. But in the end, a better team kind of leaned on them, and Vegas skates away with a 3-2 victory.
Does that first period go down as one of their best or their best periods of the year because of all the goals?
Against Anaheim?
Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose it has to, just for a team that's been goal-starved for much of the season to score that rapidly. Like, it really was something. And I should go back and look, because I don't know if they scored on 5 successive shots, but I don't imagine that they wasted many shots in that run. And, look, they gave up a goal on the first shot of the game. Troy Terry beats Thatcher Demko high to the glove side. What had Seattle done earlier in the week? Had beaten Thatcher Demko high in the glove hand, and I thought, that's not the start you're looking for Demko or the Vancouver Canucks. And then I thought, they were able to dig in and turn the tide. But when I say I didn't think they played as well against Anaheim as they did against Vegas, Demko was helped out. Ducks hit a bunch of posts in that hockey game, and they've got the worst power play in the NHL, and it was on display for all to see in that second period. So, look, the Canucks haven't run away and hid from a whole lot of opponents throughout the season, so they did on Saturday, and again, they had the advantage of a little more rest. They were at home. Vegas played the late game on Hockey Night on Saturday in Calgary, had to go to overtime and then fly here, and so I thought the strategy seemed pretty sound for the Canucks to try to get the jump on Vegas in the first period, see if they could replicate a similar first period to what they showed on Saturday afternoon. Alas, it didn't happen that way, but still, again, I thought for the most part, first 30 minutes of last night's game, no real problems with the way the Canucks performed.
I, like you, was so pleased for those in attendance who cheered the Canucks off the ice in the first period. We haven't heard much of that, and then a big loud cheer at the end of the game as well. It has been such a miserable season at Rogers Arena. The ticket-paying public deserved that one.
The Ducks game?
On Saturday.
Oh, my gosh. I thought they played pretty well versus the Vegas Golden Knights as well. And given who's out of the lineup and given what this roster looks like, even if it was healthy, I mean, they played okay. I thought it was an important game for Kevin Lankinen. He's not been very good of late. And it restores some faith, I think, if only from the fans. Maybe management just knew the reason for his struggles of late, but it was nice to see him standing on top of his head again.
Yeah, and over the final 40 minutes of that game, the shots were 25-10 for Vegas. So that tells you just how much of the game was spent in the Canucks zone over the final couple of periods. And you're right. Bottom line business, Lankinen has lost 4 straight now, including last night, but goaltending was not the problem. He gave them a chance to win, much as he did for the first half of the season, even though they didn't win every time out with him. He kept them in hockey games. And I'm with you, Blake. He had to sit and stew on that 7-6 shootout performance in Columbus for more than a week. That was his last appearance. They had turned to Thatcher Demko. Demko wasn't great against Seattle. He was better against Anaheim, as we said. But for Lankinen, you're probably wondering, when am I going to get back in there, and how long do I have to wear the stench of what happened against the Blue Jackets? And, of course, before that, the Rangers game and that Saturday at Madison Square, where he stopped 7 of the 11 shots that he faced. And even though the Canucks outplayed the Rangers, they ended up losing that one. So it had been a while since Lankinen had won a hockey game. You got to go back to the home game against Winnipeg when they blitzed the Jets before the 6-game road trip. Been a while since Kevin Lankinen has delivered a victory. But certainly the kind of performance that could have led to that result. So, yeah, I'm with you. I don't know what their plans are for the goaltending with 5 games to go. Is it a simple rotation? Do they just alternate from here on out? I don't think you're really trying to get either guy on any kind of run with 5 remaining. And so whether it's 2 starts, 3 starts for Kevin Lankinen, I think for him, I'm sure he'd like to go into the summer feeling a little bit better about his game and ultimately trying to deliver a result. But we know at this late stage, wins and losses don't really matter in the big picture to the Vancouver Canucks.
Is Räty proving something to somebody right now? That was just Johnny on the spot, but he's in the difficult areas at the top of the crease, and he's made other beautiful plays. He had the drop pass to start that whole sequence. He's not going to be the second-line center next year, but is he making them think twice? Does this affect Suter negotiations, where eventually the price gets too high on Suter and they go, well, it's fine, we'll go with Räty instead?
Possibly on that front. I think more you're seeing a lengthy audition here, Räty, between Dakota Joshua and Kiefer Sherwood, and I could absolutely see that sort of being a third line for the Vancouver Canucks next season. A lot of size there. Dakota Joshua, it's been a tough go for him, but he's showing some signs of life down the stretch here. And Kiefer Sherwood has been terrific for the Vancouver Canucks all season. So you've got 3 guys that can be physical, take the body, lean on opponents. There's enough to like there. And the fact that Rick Tocchet has switched things up really all season long, and he's stuck with this trio now for 7 games, and they've been pretty productive. So with Räty, goals, sure, he's got goals, 4 goals in his last 6 games. You certainly take that bottom line. Again, another really nice night in the faceoff circle, won 7 of his 10 draws. He's been used here a couple of times recently for shorthanded faceoff just because of his prowess, not so much as a penalty killer, but try to win the faceoff, do your part there, you can get off the ice, and other guys can hop on and take the heavy lifting of the penalty kill. We'll see if they develop him into a penalty killer on top of that, but it just shows the trust that Rick Tocchet obviously is finding with this guy on a team that doesn't have a lot of faceoff guys. That is a separating skill for Räty without a doubt. So, yeah, I think these are all steps in the right direction. He's got 6 goals at the NHL level in limited time and, sporadic opportunities up and down on the Abbotsford shuttle. A guy like Nils Höglander scored his 7th last night and has been pretty much a regular for much of the season, obviously, out of the lineup for the last 6 prior to last night. But Räty, it's not a world-beating total, but no. 6 goals in limited time. I think you can see, if you sort of scrape away a few of the layers, you can see the promise of a player that, and again, only 22. That's the other thing. Even though he's been on hockey radar for seemingly forever, he is still only 22 years of age.
Lots of development left.
Yeah, and this is one of the better news stories for the Vancouver Canucks is the second half that Nils Höglander has had, and that he drops off. He drops into the lineup after coming back from injury, Jeff, and immediately scores another goal. Suddenly the extension that at one point we were sweating earlier this season looks like it could be okay, and that Nils can get back to being the 20-plus goal scorer that we saw a season ago.
Yeah, and look, there's been a lot of people that have documented really since Christmas. The underlying numbers have been off the charts good for him. The production didn't necessarily follow, but it's one of those things that if you continue to do the right things night after night after night, you're not going to be denied. Eventually, you'll get a few bounces, a few breaks, pucks will start to go your way, and I think we're seeing that really over the last couple of weeks, before the injury, and then to get back in there and pick up where he left off, he's being rewarded. And so another guy, and look, there's enough of them on this team. At the end of the season, we're going to step back and we'll look at the point totals and the goal totals and say, hey, you had 24 last year and you're going to finish with 7 or 8. Unacceptable. But I think really since Christmas, he has played much more at the level of the guy that was able to get to 24 goals a year ago. And I think he's cleaned up a lot of the warts defensively that 3 NHL coaches have had some issues with, right? And that goes a long way. I mean, we know with Rick Tocchet, it all starts with your play away from the puck and in your own zone, and then you go to town offensively. It does seem like Nils Höglander, something has kind of clicked with him, and maybe it's just repetition at the NHL level, whatever the case. So much more responsible defensively now, and I do think it's leading to good things in the offensive zone.
What do you think these 2 road games look like against formidable opponents? You know, mathematically, you're on the ropes here. So the dream is dead. They have to know in their heads. Is there a chance they get waxed here? Do you expect them to prove something to a coach that, again, they don't even know if they're playing for their coach for next season? It's a strange set of affairs here over the last 5 games.
Yeah, and I think if you're Rick Tocchet, you probably like the fact that a lot of these top teams, you could say, hey, they're going to take their foot off the gas. They've clinched their playoff spot, but there's so much jockeying for positions and maybe to try to avoid the St. Louis Blues the way that they're going in the opening round. The Dallas Stars still think that they can win the conference, and they lost both games on the weekend, lost to Pittsburgh and then lost to Minnesota, had a third period lead in both of those games. Like, that's not the Dallas Stars that have put together another incredible season. So I think the Stars are going to be motivated that, you're going to see Pete DeBoer kind of crack the whip and try to get them back on their habits. They're so deep up front. They just got so much talent, and that's going to be a handful for the Canucks. Last time they were in there, of course, that was the day that the Canucks traded JT Miller, and Canucks didn't play very well, as you can understand. I mean, quite a blow to the entire operation and organization, and it kind of looked that way on the ice. And then Dallas came to town here, and the Canucks hung with them, kind of like the Vegas game last night. They hung with Dallas for a while, but ultimately cream rose to the crop there, or to the top. And then Colorado, I think that's the test. Like, Colorado with the speed that they've got. And look, guys, we saw it again here last night with Vegas. Vegas transitioned the puck so easily, and it just felt like they recognized that the Canucks' rush defense isn't good enough. You saw the Barbashev goal, obviously. Colorado can kill you. They can make you look foolish. And so I think the Canucks are going to have to be letter perfect. And that may be asking too much, obviously, with the guys that they've got in their lineup. But you're taking on a couple of heavyweights. You're going to get a desperate Minnesota team in here on Saturday for the start of that final homestand, and then one more look at the Vegas Golden Knights in Game 82 on April 16th. So 4 of the final 5 are against teams that are likely going to the playoffs. I think Minnesota, the comeback win against Dallas on Sunday afternoon was huge for them. And so schedule doesn't really let up for the Vancouver Canucks. Final 2 road games will not be easy, and we'll see if they or how they measure up, I suppose, against the Stars and the Avs.
Last review from the weekend, Victor Mancini went on that nice jaunt down the right side. He's played a little bit more here in the last week. What are you seeing from Mancini?
Yeah, unfortunate bounce, obviously, off the back of the skate there. I'm not going to hold that one against him. No. But what an opportunity for a young guy to paired with Quinn Hughes primarily over the weekend with no Tyler Myers in the lineup, and we don't know the extent. Nobody seems to be talking about Myers, but didn't practice Friday, didn't play either of these games. I don't know if he traveled with the hockey club, so we'll have to wait and see. But this is opportunity knocking for both Victor Mancini and DPD as well, and great to see Elias Pettersson get his first in the National Hockey League. That's a nice goal on Saturday, too, jumping into the rush and snapping it home. But I thought Mancini struggled. And I don't know if that was the nerves of playing with Quinn Hughes or recognizing that the audition is here, and he has to understand where Tom Höglander sort of fits in the grand scheme of things as well. So this truly is an audition for Victor Mancini. But there was a play in the first period off the faceoff in the offensive zone where he jumped in. Rick Tocchet always talks about diving in. He dove in and he missed, and Vegas broke out 3-on-1, and you can't do that at the NHL level, particularly against really good opponents like the Vegas Golden Knights. There were a few other coverage issues. I thought he was on the ice for 2 of the 3 goals, including the winner. I'm not going to hold the winning goal against him either, but yeah, I mean, look, if we're going to criticize this game, I'm glad you pointed out the rush in the second period. That's sort of the tantalizing size of this guy at his size, to be able to motor up ice, recognize an opportunity.
Turn the corner.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think right now there's some good and some bad and still in the development phase for him. But, I mean, if people look at these games and think, what's at stake or what's to play for, if you're Victor Mancini, I think you got 5 more games here if you play them all. To put your best foot forward to sort of lay your claim to an inside track to a roster spot for next season out of training camp.
So does Max Sasson after his goal on Saturday. Has to jump in and play because the injury to Nils Oman. And honestly, Jeff, we're talking about Räty and whether or not he can be a full-time NHLer next year. I almost wondered the same thing about Sasson, particularly with this team, because they need his speed in the lineup, even if it's not at center ice.
Yeah, no, you're right. Picked the pocket of Oliver Shillington, made no mistake, showed some pretty nifty hands as well. And again, a guy in limited minutes here is 3 goals, not a huge total, but has shown enough offensive chops, obviously, and the speed on a team that doesn't have a ton of it, and especially with the uncertainty around Philip Hedl. Yeah, I mean, there may be an opportunity for Max Sasson. So, interesting that Sasson stayed in the lineup, and I think that was a reward for the way that he played on Saturday. And Jonathan Lekkerimäki was the guy that came out on Sunday, which, and I said this on social, that I don't love the idea of Lekkerimäki as a healthy scratch if he's up and on the NHL roster. But in saying that, I get it, because a lot of guys performed on Saturday. A lot of guys have performed here of late. And quite frankly, since the shootout goal in Jersey, it's been a little too quiet for Jonathan Lekkerimäki. And Rick Tocchet kind of pushed back last week when I asked about increased opportunities for the young guy and said, hey, we've got a plan. We know what we're doing here. I don't know if the plan was always sitting him for one of the games in the back-to-back on the weekend. But I wonder, too, is that, just a little poke with a sharp stick to remind him that his spot in the lineup on a nightly basis isn't a given at this stage and that they need more from him. And he's been given power play time. I want to see him shoot the puck. Like on Saturday, when things were going for everybody in this lineup, Lekkerimäki didn't even have a shot on goal. And so, when he's in there, that shot is his it's his meal ticket. He's got to take the puck and, be a little selfish. Like, don't defer to Quinn Hughes all the time. Just shoot the puck. Let's see what happens there. So, wasn't shocked that Lekkerimäki was the guy ultimately that came out of the lineup, but we'll see how quickly he gets back in there and what he does the next time that he gets to suit up for the Vancouver Canucks.
Last question. Jeff, did I hear you say I had my face in my pad? Have we moved away from the routine of one single piece of double-sided paper to take notes at the game? Blake, this would be earth-shattering if Jeff has changed his game day routine.
No, I suppose then you put me on E's and O's because it is still the single page of 8 by 11 or whatever the dimensions of a standard sheet of photocopy paper are. Yes. Telling tales out of school for not that anybody cares how I jot down my notes, but yes, I said notepad. I have a notepad in my bag, but you're right. When it comes to game notes, it is always just a single sheet of paper.
Of paper. That's right. That's how he works. Have you seen this before?
I have, yes.
Yep.
Jim Robson.
It's got to fit on one sheet of paper. Those are the rules. Thank you, Jeff. We'll talk to you later this week.
All right, guys. Thanks.
Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center. And if you're heading to a game in downtown Vancouver, make a staycation out of it. Book your stay here at the Wall. Call 604-331-1000. Ask for the exclusive Harrison Price rate. Some blackout date supply based on availability.
Driving around on the weekend, saw a car go by, and I thought, wow, that is a fun-looking car. And I realized it's a BZ4X. It's been so while since I've been in my test drive. Forgot how gorgeous a car it is. And with electric cars, of course, first and foremost, be the different electric car out there. And the one with the Toyota brand that's going to last, quality made. They were first on the block, of course, with the Prius all those years ago. Get that same Toyota quality now in a 100% electric vehicle in the HOV lane, passing the gas stations. It's glorious. Go take one for a test drive. You're going to have a lot of fun. And with up to $6,500 in rebates and incentives, you'll be pleased there as well, not to mention 0.99% financing APR over 36 months. ShopToyota.ca. Better yet, take one for a test drive at your local Pacific Toyota dealer.
Vancouver Whitecaps FC with a thorough victory on Saturday, beating Colorado 2-0, and yet that is not the biggest news of the weekend for the Caps. They improved to 5-1-1, 2 points better than Columbus atop the MLS, 3 points better than expansion San Diego.
4 starters on the sideline still. Like, this is not even the A1 team,
Absolutely.
And they're 5-1-1.
Gald, Atakube, we learned Jaden Nelson's going to be out 2 to 3 weeks with a hamstring.
No
Laporta missing as well.
No Udvik.
Mm-hmm. And yet, better than everybody in MLS.
Emmanuel Sabe could end up being a star here. We'll see. I really like what he's shown so far.
Opens his Whitecaps account with his first marker. Brian White scores again because that's what Brian White does. And Vite, Kubas, Ocampo, like just all terrific for Vancouver. And yet the big story is what Bob Mackin of the Breaker had on Friday, that a new stadium deal could be a catalyst to completing a sale of the club. This at the Hastings Racecourse location at the PNE. The idea would be the new Whitecaps owner would inherit the land and be responsible for financing the stadium project. Caps with a statement Friday after Bob reported what he reported. We can confirm Whitecaps FC currently in discussions with the city of Vancouver regarding the construction of a stadium at the PNE Fairgrounds site. The club's ownership has always been clear on their goal of constructing a purpose-built stadium and the importance of a suitable venue to both fan experience and financial performance for any professional sports franchise.
I heard this weeks ago when I was down in Colorado doing an MLS game. It was from an MLS legend, actually, but a U.S. legend, no ties to Vancouver. And I thought, it sounds too good to be true. I don't trust it. I didn't trust it. The PNE Fairgrounds makes a lot of sense. It really does. And I don't think it matters necessarily, Matt, that it's a means to an end for the current ownership group to make the sale, as long as the stadium does get built. News itself can't be the leverage, but if there's a true shovel in the ground and the stadium starts to get built, I don't think Whitecaps fans care that it's a tactic to get the sale. Whatever gets the job done to get the stadium there. And for all those quibbling, there's no rapid transit out there. First of all, that's going to change. And second of all, you find me the spot in Vancouver that has the rapid transit so readily available with land that's right there, that's not being used. Dream the impossible dream, sure. But that land needs a tenant. And it's got a highway right next to it. And it's going to have rapid transit. The BC Transit plan already includes a rapid transit line coming down from the North Shore across that Second Earls area. So
you're years and years and years,
but that's
if
how
not decades away. But
that building's designed for a few decades as well.
So forgive me for being skeptical, if not cynical, on this.
Okay.
We had said when the Caps acknowledged that they are for sale, that it was going to be very difficult to find a buyer, particularly an out-of-market buyer, who would want to buy the team and continue to be a tenant at BC Place with the lack of revenue streams that entails, and particularly given some of the frustrations that they've had with BC Place and motocross and things like that, double booking and keeping the Caps out of their home ground, not to mention the turf, which is an issue for some. So I'm not surprised that is the case, that Whitecaps ownership has pivoted to this. Great. We have not heard anything from the city. There is a case to be made if you are donating the land that is on the back of taxpayers. The stadium itself is going to be quite an expensive proposition for a new buyer to construct. And if you were worried about the only interest in this franchise being portable, this would seem a necessary step to save face if you had to sell the team to someone who was moving it.
Sorry, walk me through the last part.
Well, if the only interest you've gotten so far is from people who want to pick up the team and move it to Indianapolis or Las Vegas or wherever, and your local owners, which of course Greg Kerfoot is, Jeff Mallett has long history in this province as well, you would want to demonstrate that you went through a number of plans, activities to try and keep the team here.
Yeah, that's what I said off the. That's what I said off the top. I said
hands up.
That's what I said off the top. Like this can't just be a brochure so that you can sell the team to somebody that's going to move it. There has to be concrete evidence, and I mean, pun intended, concrete evidence of a stadium.
Nice.
And then it's a great story. Because then it's a stadium that you're selling with the team, and again, this is a World Cup city here in less than 2 years.
Mm-hmm. Next year,
and people love to paint that Don Garber hates Canada, and he certainly I think prioritizes American franchises at times. I don't think they want to leave. Ideally, like this is a city that is begging for Major League Soccer involvement. I think all things being equal, they'd rather be in Vancouver than another mid-market in the States.
You never want to leave. You never want to leave and have to admit defeat in a market, which is what would be happening here. Now, we'll see what Mayor Ken Sim says on this. Haven't heard from him at the moment we've recorded this. Of course, he had a bigger priority on Saturday, and that was his ABC candidates taking a shellacking in those by-elections. Next year is a municipal election, so you may well be dealing with a different mayor, a different set of councillors. So we'll see. Long way to go. Positive step. Some of us remember the Caps beginning their MLS existence there at the temporary Empire Field, and quite frankly, there was a good case to just leave that stadium up.
Wow, yeah, I mean, pretty rickety stadium to be lasting for 10, 15 years.
It's one lot over from where they would be.
Oh no, the location is
Hastings fine. Racecourse,
and the quaintness was great. Mm-hmm. But here's the thing to remember is that I was down in Denver doing a game. The Denver Stadium is 17,000 seats. So for anybody who looks at a crowd, like even on the weekend at BC Place for the Whitecaps and goes, look, there's empty seats there's 27,000 seats in the lower bowl of BC Place.
Well, Blake, there were just under 18 for the Caps game Saturday.
Yeah.
There were 12-3 for the Caps game Wednesday. There were 12-2 for the women's national team and their fantastic 3-0 victory over Argentina on Friday. And shout out Julia Grosso scored before her home public.
In a 20,000 seat stadium, all three of those events would have looked great.
Yeah.
Particularly the Caps League game.
Yeah.
They would have looked great. I was down in Denver. They had a 17,000 seat stadium that looked like the lower bowl of BC Place. Mm-hmm. So we do have the capacity to have the atmosphere that everybody wants on a nightly basis for the Whitecaps if it's in an appropriately sized stadium. Now, you don't want to make it too small because, I don't know, do the Lions get involved here? I don't know.
Can I ask
Probably
you?
Not.
Can I ask you a woulda, coulda, shoulda?
Mm-hmm.
On the BC Place renovation, should we have just lopped off the upper bowl? 27,000 seat BC Place?
Well, that solves the seating thing, but I
know there are certain
the slope is wrong. Like it's way too gentle. Nobody builds stadiums like this anymore with that gentle slope. It's not great. It's a great stadium when you need to fill 50,000.
Exactly,
and it's a great thing to have in our back pocket. It's a shame it doesn't get used much. There's not many occasions to use this stadium at this size
at full capacity. Taylor Swift can do it. The Grey Cup can do it. I guess the weekend is at AC/DC that's playing there. So you will get those big stadium concerts. You will get the huge sporting events, although even the huge sporting events sometimes now are okay going into smaller capacity venues. Look, in terms of the site, and I'm a horse racing fan, but I understand what's happening at Hastings Racecourse and the owner there and what's happening to the sport writ large. I think a healthy dose of skepticism is required here.
Because of what?
Well, like I said, I mean,
You think it's a ploy?
I didn't say ploy. What I'm saying is, if the land is being donated, there is a case with regards to the taxpayer. You are going to have people who object.
Mm-hmm.
Then the new owner has to not only buy an MLS franchise, and there are some that would argue that MLS franchises are wholly overvalued, even in comparison to the other big leagues, and then finance the construction of the stadium on top of that. So this is a massive, massive capital project for the new owner. If they're not local, why would they do that? They would have to be an enormous soccer fan.
But the other,
And of course, you're going to need the city and its decision makers to all sign off on this. So there's a number of steps to go here.
the way it had been described to me weeks ago was that the Whitecaps' current ownership also could build it and then sell it at a much higher price. So
Okay.
that it might come to that where they or at least half built it. It's
they
halfway
They
built.
may have to. It may be
Yeah.
a proof of concept thing. So then the question becomes, would Greg and Jeff and their partners want to finance that?
Right. Leverage that, knowing that the price would eventually come
Right.
in.
Or is it just easier to sell it to someone who wants to take it elsewhere? Vancouver Canadians win 2 of 3 in Tri-City to begin their season against the Dust Devils. Arjun Nimmala. This is the 19-year-old first-round shortstop we've been telling you about. 3 hits Saturday, including a tape, and then Sunday, a tape measure home run that flies out of the stadium. Tyler Zickel there, the C's playman, saying the longest home run he has seen at Gisa Stadium in 5 years calling games there. They win 10-2 on Sunday. 5th rounder Jackson Wentworth with 5 scoreless innings Saturday in his professional debut. Was drafted, didn't pitch last year. 3-0 victory for the C's. They continue on the road, but are, of course, at home a week from tomorrow, April 15th, for the home opener at Nat Bailey, 7:05 against Eugene. Get your tickets, 604-872-5232 or CanadiansBaseball.com. And Saga over in Toronto, Vladdy Guerrero agrees to a 14-year $500 million contract. It is the 3rd richest pact in all of baseball after Soto and Ohtani. Because it does not include any deferred money, it is the number 2 right now. Of course, Ohtani still's got all that deferred money. And this comes after Vladdy goes homerless in his first 10 games.
Yeah.
People joking he scurried to the table after that. Jays have a major league low 5 home runs, period, and got swept by the Mets.
Yeah. And the other good news with regards to the timing of all this, well, not even the timing, just the overall is, Vladdy's done such a good job of keeping himself in fabulous condition that in, 10 to 12 years' time, you can just imagine him being the same kind of guy that he is now.
At 40 years old, you think he'll still be...
peak physical shape. I can only imagine.
Western Hockey League playoffs, where the Vancouver Giants have been eliminated. They lose to Spokane in 5 games. Victoria advances in 5 games over Tri-City. And for the first time in 23 years, the Prince George Cougars will be playing a Game 7. They have won 2 straight to force a deciding 7th game in Portland against the Winterhawks. Oddity on the other side of the bracket, where we're down to Edmonton versus Prince Albert in a Game 7. If Edmonton wins, it's an all-Alberta semifinals. 4 Alberta teams will make it to the Eastern Conference semifinals if the Oil Kings win. And then how about the Vancouver Warriors of the NLL? They win their 4th straight game. They have not lost since Christian Del Bianco, the great goaltender and former league MVP, was acquired in a trade from Calgary. 10-4, they beat Albany Friday at Rogers Arena. It looked like a fun, full crowd, too. Got people coming now. They're 9-7. they're up to 5th place in the NLL standings. Now, that sounds good because they were in 9th not too long ago. It is just one game up on a huge Chase pack. They're headed to Toronto next week, but looking pretty good to make the playoffs. Boy, you make a trade, you hope for instant results.
And from what I understand, this is maybe a franchise-saving trade in a lot of ways because I don't know that ownership has been terribly enthused about the water that was taken on by this franchise.
Well, how could you be? I mean, we've talked about how the other franchises around here have struggled. This has been the biggest loser of them all.
Right. And while people that did go raved about the experience, there's just not enough of those people. So the interest that the Del Bianco trade has garnered and the winning, most importantly, might be saving this franchise.
It looked like a fantastic scene there on Friday. But we have not had NLL playoffs ever at Rogers Arena, so I think that would be terrific fun.
To be honest, we haven't talked about the Warriors on this show much because there has not been anything to talk about.
There has been no injury,
There's been no interesting, broad storylines, and the diehards will be like, no, so-and-so scored this many goals. If it doesn't lead to wins, if it doesn't lead to widespread
There's
attention.
got to be a transcendent storyline, and there is now.
Yeah.
So well done to the Warriors. Been fantastic watching this. Surrey Mitsubishi poll question results from Friday. Will you be going out of your way to watch Alex Ovechkin break Wayne Gretzky's record? Yes or no? What did the people say?
People said no.
This poll ran so tight almost from the minute we fired it. No had a slight lead for most of the day, and then he scored 2 on Friday, and the yes vote turned out. Yes poll at 50.5%.
Oh, really? Wow. That is very
well, because I think people did go out of their way on a rainy Sunday morning, and how fortunate was the scheduling there, especially vis-a-vis our market and what was going on outside. What am I going to do today on a lazy Sunday? Look at it. It's pouring cats and dogs. You know what? I'm going to stay in and at least watch this Ovechkin game, and he scored early enough. Sent you on your way. Bain says, better than following the Canucks at this point. Once-in-a-lifetime historical moment. Xerxes, I hate to make it political, but there's not much motivation when one guy supports the guy trying to pulverize the global economy and the other guy supports the guy trying to wipe Ukraine off the map. Benjamin, not go out of my way, but it would be awesome to see. Steve, there's nothing worse than seeing some people I thought I could trust following an obvious Putin supporter. And GJK, absolutely. It's a record that no one thought would be broken. Alex is a hockey legend. Let's go, Ovi.
Yeah, said my piece on this, but I did not watch a second of it. Not a second.
I happened to flip over Friday after he scored his second because I saw it on my feed and was with my parents watching news and they wanted to watch it. And I happened to see it as well yesterday because it was a rainy Sunday morning. Mm-hmm. Errors and omissions. I do not have anything noted from Friday, and you say you have nothing from.
No, JC thought he had one, and he took it back.
Mm-hmm.
He exonerated you, so we got nothing.
Right. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for joining us, everybody. Appreciate you spending some time and connecting with the program. Please do subscribe to all our assorted channels, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Follow on social. That's X, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky, live on many of those platforms, noon Pacific time. Weekdays, and of course, support the community sponsors you hear us talking about. Keep it local.